welcome to Attic Raiders Retro Reviews, where today I'm going to be creating a Centaur for use in Warriors of Athena, or any fantasy war game that you like. If you've not seen my review for Warriors of Athena, then you can check it out up here. If you have seen it, you will know that you need quite a lot of Centaur figures for this game, and that North Star are going to be releasing plastic box sets of Centaurs, but that they're not going to be out in time for the book's release. So I'm going to be creating my own figure, kit bashing together things which are either free to me or I've had just in my collection lying around. Hopefully this will inspire you to have a go at creating your own Centaur figures, so let's get started. I'm going to use this toy zebra. It's a bit smaller than traditional Centaur figures, but I think it's going to work out. I scraped off the China sign on the bottom, took off the flashing, and now I need to cut off his head, which I'm just using a normal hobby knife for. But this plastic's a bit tougher than I thought it was going to be, so I ended up having to snip it off using my hobby sprue cutters. Getting the horse to man transition right for this is quite important, so I'm spending some extra time paring this down with a hobby knife and trying to just get the angle right on the body so that when it joins to the human section it's going to look seamless. For the upper part I'm using this old Warhammer Age of Sigmar figure. I've got lots of these models that kids made in a club with me but didn't bother taking home, but you can get this type of figure free from local Warhammer stores. The legs have got to go, so it's back out with the hobby sprue cutters and carefully snipping them off, and then even more needed sliced off. It's a good match now, but it's going to need to be raised up a little bit more to look more in proportion. And I don't want that helmet, so that head needs to get snipped off as well, leaving a stump for the neck. To raise up that upper body, I'm just snipping off a little bit of sprue which can be glued in that gap, joining it to the upper body with polystyrene cement, and then using super glue to join it to the lower half of the body, because this is a different kind of plastic and polystyrene cement won't work on it. Once that's joined, checking it from all angles and making sure none of those bits of sprue stick out too much and that everything lines up well. A lot of people use green stuff for sculpting on their minis, but Milliput is my go-to product. It's really soft and easy to shape, and you can use water to smooth it exactly the way you want it. Now the join from horse to man can really look odd if you don't get it right, so I'm going to spend quite a bit of time trying to get this all matching up properly and getting a really smooth transition. And some areas will need bulked up more than others so that the two torso sections go together properly. And once the milliput's down, you can then start smoothing it out with water. You can of course use any tool for this at all, just dip the end of it in some water, but I like to use the rounded end of a paintbrush. It's good for pressing things into shape and scraping off extra material that isn't needed. Then going right at the join, I've used my hobby knife again just to get those edges to join up nice and smooth and flat. And it really helps to keep moving the model around at this point and check it from different angles. And then you can flip the paintbrush around and use the bristle side to smooth everything down nicely. Now Milliput doesn't form the strongest join between materials, so I do like to put some super glue on it once it is dry. This will soak into any gaps, forming a strong bond, but it'll also soak into the Milliput itself, making it stronger. I want a much more Greek looking head, and this Victrix hoplite helmeted head is a good size and will keep in proportion. So a bit more polystyrene cement on the end of the neck stump, and on it goes, making sure the head is at a good angle. And then to finish it, he needs his crest glued on, and then making sure that that's straight, again checking it from different angles. Once he's built, he gets hit with some primer, and this brings everything together and lets you see any issues with that sculpting. There's a couple of bumps, so I'll hit that with some sandpaper and repaint. And once everything's ironed out, bit of super glue, and then he can get glued down onto a suitable size base, ready to get some colours on him. I like to pretty much do all my base colours first before doing any shading or highlighting. I'm going to start off with a light brown for his horsey body, and then move on to a hopefully Greek looking bronze for all of his armour. This can be done quite quick, I just need to be careful on the edges. This really starts to bring him together, but it is going to need some depth and highlights to it to really bring out that dimensionality. Great big spear needs some bronze to tie it in with the rest of the model, and the spear head needs a bit of dark silver. When it comes to adding colour to fantasy or period models, I've got a bit of a thing for deep red, so on it goes onto the spear shaft. I'm then going to highlight the armour with a bit of careful dry brushing of a copper colour. And when that's dry, a bit more dry brushing, this time with a bright gold. With highlights done, we need to add depth, so I'm using a browny flesh colour here, a little wash in order to go over the top of everything, and on these higher points I will take some of that back off using just some water to dilute it down. Some black wash on the spear tip blade, and bring that down to add some more detail to the wrapping of the shaft. And then a little bit more of that bright gold dabbed onto the edges to add contrast to that depth wash. I'm then going to start picking out some of the fine details, again using that dark red so that it ties together, we don't have any jarring contrasts. I'm going to use that for all of his straps, which are holding his armour on. Then a bit of black to pick out the base of his crest on his helmet, and then a slightly brighter red for the actual horsehair crest itself. I don't want all the non-metallics to be the same colour, so I'm going to use this kind of aqua blue in order to pick out this crest on his shoulder. And then those red strap details need a little bit of a black wash in order to add some depth in between the individual straps. And we need a bit more black wash in order to show the detail on his crest. This is a little thick, so it will need watered down with just some plain water on the brush. His facial features need some added depth, this time with a dark brown wash. And I'm going to use that same dark brown wash to add some shadow detailing underneath where his armour sits on his skin. And in fact, I'm going to take that same dark brown wash and apply it all over the horse section of his body in order to add more depth and detail. I need to start picking out some of the highlights on his face with a lighter colour in order to make those pop more. And then I'm going to dry brush some of that base colour back over the top of that horse body. This adds more variation and highlights, but it also eliminates that glossiness which the wash has left. And once that's done, dry brushing over it again with an even lighter colour to add more variation to the body. Now I could just leave the lower half of the body a light brown, but I want to push it more, so I'm going to base my horsey boy on this fine specimen. To do that, I'm going to add some black, making sure it's thinned down to the lower legs, and then use just water on my brush to thin it further and blend it into the rest of the leg. While the legs are drying, I'm going to dry brush the spear shaft with a brighter red in order to bring out the detail, and do the same with the helmet crest. Some black wash detail on the shoulder emblem, and then it's back again to the legs, this time adding in the white detail. White is a bit of a pain when it comes to blending due to the pigment size used in the paint, but it is possible with a bit of water on the brush. A little bit of light brown on the hooves to finish off the legs and the lower body, and then it's on to the part that I've been putting off. The eyes in these Vitric models are really small, so getting detail in them is pretty hard, and this is my first attempt of many here. There was a lot of wiping off white paint with water on my brush and painting back over skin areas before I got it to this point. But once the white's done, it's time for the black pupils, and again this took a couple of attempts to get right, and even then skin on the nose and round his eyes had to be repainted. Of course, skin repainting meant that some of that paint got on the helmet, and so that needed touched back up. There's a lot of back and forth and redos. But once he's finally complete, it's time to get that base done. So I'm just laying down a dark brown that's going to go under what I glue onto it. I like to use wood glue when I'm basing because it gives a really nice strong hold once it's dry. For my Greek style basing material, I'm using sand I collected from the beach, crushed up cat litter and some fake green grass flocking. Just make sure all of that wood glue is well and truly covered, then take it out and shake off the excess. And you can then use a damp paintbrush to get rid of any extra sticky out bits that you don't want. A bit of black paint around the rim of the base to make it look neat and tidy. And then the finishing touch, gluing on a new shield. And I deliberately didn't glue this on before painting so that it was easier to get at the arm with the paintbrush. This is a Victrix Greek hoplite shield which I've added on here. I painted up the back of the shield like everything else, but I used a Victrix water slide decal on the front of the shield to get this really nice decoration which I just couldn't achieve with a paintbrush. And there he is, ready to help the rest of his warband do mighty deeds for Athena. I was originally worried he'd be a bit small, but he actually scales really nicely against the other Victrix figures that I have in my party. So it's probably a good idea to use a horse that's smaller than you think it should be. I hope that's inspired you to have a go at creating your own. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment down below, and I'll be back next time with more wargaming and vintage board games on Attic Raiders Retro Reviews.